Okay, so I just want to do a real quick history lesson for all those who've seen what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz and in the Red Sea. See, we've done this over and over again. That's why everybody already knows the outcome. So let's take a look at history to why I say this is not going to end well for America or the world.
This vision shows a daring attack by Houthi rebels on a cargo ship in the Red Sea in November 2023. Fighters armed with guns use a helicopter to land on a cargo ship and seize control of it. Since then, the US says there have been dozens of attacks like this one on commercial ships. The Houthis, who are based in Yemen...
So notice where we are. This is the Red Sea. This is the Strait of Hormuz. So the Houthi control, as you can see, is in yellow. We're going through the history from a couple of years ago. This ain't ages ago. This is just a couple of years ago.
Are designated a global terrorist organisation by the US. The group is supported by Iran, and they say they're targeting all ships travelling towards Israel as a way to support Hamas and Gaza. That's why we've seen the US team up with other countries to protect this narrow pass.
Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now 7.
They emerged in the 1990s to combat what they saw as corruption in Yemen's Sunni Muslim government. They became prominent in 2014 when they demanded lower fuel prices and a new government.
Now, they wanted a new government because this is the government that we helped install. And they found out, just like Iran did many, many years ago, that they were getting ripped off. They have to get ripped off in order to pay that high tax that America puts on them in order to keep the regime safe, in order that they don't get attacked by America, in other words. So you got to promote America's interests. The people see they were getting screwed. The government becomes even more corrupt because they got to get theirs too. So everybody's on the take, and only the people don't prosper.
Which led to the beginning of Yemen's civil war. In January 2015, they seized the presidential palace. The president and his government resigned, and he was forced to flee abroad. Saudi Arabia supported the government in Yemen, and with backing from the US, the UK and France, along with Egypt, Morocco, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Pakistan and Sudan.
Now you see all these countries. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 countries. We've tried this before. 12 countries united. And these are the major companies that were backing the US. A lot of them don't back us anymore. But this is what just happened a few years ago. Now, Saudi Arabia is heavily invested. They decided to stick with America and pick a side and invest in our AI. That's what they're using their petrodollars for, meaning the money that we buy from them, they invest back in AI. That's how they bought into Jared Kushner. Then they bought into the AI, for America. Then they got the chips. They're winning. But at the same time, they thought they were going to get protection.
Saudi Arabia started a series of airstrikes. The Houthis in Yemen are part of what they call the Axis of Resistance, a series of autonomous militant Islamist groups supported by Iran. They include Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and some groups in parts of Iraq and Syria. This intervention by other countries in Yemen's civil war turned into a proxy war along Sunni Shia lines between Saudi Arabia and Iran. The Houthis control these areas, which includes the north of Yemen, the capital Sana'a, as well as the west coast, which is next to the Red Sea, close to where the attacks have taken place. Yemen's government has a presence in these areas. After a decade of fighting, the civil war has devastated the country.
Civil war. This is what Netanyahu promised would happen if we killed the leader over in Iran. Like I said, We did this before. It doesn't work. This civil war happened because of the people trying to get America out of the government.
The UN says the conflict has caused more than 377,000 deaths. 60% are the result of hunger, a lack of health care, and unsafe drinking water. So let's take a look at how that's influencing what's happening in the Red Sea. The Houthis say their strikes on Western vessels heading for Israel are in solidarity with the Palestinian people, but they're causing huge disruptions.
Now remember, this before the current situation that the Palestinian people are in. They've just been constantly murdering them, back to back to back. Now, Israel is expanding into Lebanon. So they're not giving up. This is not going to end. They know that Israel wants to kill every last one of them. This fight was being fought because of what was happening in Palestine. Now they done brought the fight to Iran.
The Red Sea is a critical global shipping channel. This is what a typical route looked like before the attacks. There's a consistent flow of goods from manufacturing.
This is why your gas is high. This is the shortest route of trade, as you can see, from Asia all the way to the east. This is the shortest route. That is Red Sea. Otherwise, I got to go all the way around Africa, right? So that costs more money to go all the way around Africa once they cut this off. This is how they get up here to Europe, Italy, France, all of that, right? The other choke point is right here, Strait of Hormuz, to get to the Middle East, to bring all this oil back around here so they can get what in return from the Asian countries and India and all that? Food.
A sea passage that would usually take about 26 days. Almost 15% of global sea trade goes through here in the Red Sea, which is linked to the Mediterranean by the Suez Canal, and it's the shortest distance between Europe and Asia. To avoid the risk of being attacked, companies are rerouting ships south around the Cape of Good Hope and up to Europe. It adds an extra 10 days to the journey. It requires more fuel and more insurance.
Because I think we're at 100 and something now, a barrel. But yes, this is why y'all gonna be dying. Just because of a 28-day trip. Trump say we got plenty of oil. We don't need to even be doing this. So why are we there?
There are suggestions that attacks on ships through the Red Sea are intended to cause economic pain for Israel, to pressure it into a ceasefire. The airstrikes by the US and the UK, which are supported by Australia, show that tensions could escalate in a region already struggling with the war.
Are you hearing these countries?
One huge fear is that this high-stakes conflict could also draw in Saudi Arabia and Iran, transforming the war into an all-out regional dispute.
Smoke rose above the Yemeni port city of Hodeidah in late July as the Israeli Air Force carried out a series of strikes on transportation and energy infrastructure. The operation, which marked Israel's first direct involvement in the country, came in response to Houthi strikes against Tel Aviv the week prior. Yet such strikes also occur in the context of the broader Red Sea crisis. In October 2023, in response to the Gaza conflict, the Houthis began a partial blockade of the Bab al-Mandab Strait. By January 2024, traffic through the Red Sea had halved, drawing the ire of the West. The United States launched Operation Prosperity Guardian.
Operation Prosperity Guardian. Exact same thing we doing now.
A carrier strike group alongside 20 regional and international allies.
I'm sorry, did he just say 20? 20 allies? Trump act like he don't need no help, but he was saying that because they already denied him. Because, look, this happened before. But what you're looking at right here, these ships, that was just half of them.
The Americans had planned to take the fight directly to the Houthis, whereas their European allies sought to provide escort missions through their own separate tasks.
You see that? That was the other half. All these countries right here tried to come from two different directions. Let's see what happened.
Named Operation Aspides. 6 months on, however, the Houthis remain undeterred, and more than 100 incidents have been reported with no end in sight. On the contrary, June saw a significant spike in attacks on shipping. The sinking of the MV Tutor, the second major vessel sunk by the Houthis since the start of the crisis, drove insurance premiums sky high.
You hear that? These are billion-dollar ships. They was sinking like 70 of them, I think, that year. That money, with the escorts, because it's an asymmetric war. You can't fight guerrilla warfare with these big-ass ships that was intended to fight other big-ass ships. Not a little bitty guy swimming in the water, boom, putting a little mine on a boat. Little bitty drones. That's why this don't work. Meanwhile, that little bitty less than $1,000 depth charge that somebody went and stuck on the side of the boat caused $1 billion worth of damage.
Not necessarily outgunned, but certainly outmaneuvered, the US Navy finds itself in the most intense naval engagement since the Second World War. Warfare is expensive, and the operation costs are already amounting to close to $4 billion. Yet Washington has made little to no progress in the fight against the Houthis.
Little to no progress. Little to no progress. This was a year ago, this was made. So we're not talking about in ancient times. Okay?
Were unable to overcome a ragtag band of rebels. Perhaps it is true, even giants can fall. As such, over time, fighting the Houthis became expensive, too expensive. By 2021, the Saudis signaled their intention to withdraw.
By 2021, the Saudis signaled their intention to withdraw. It was costing them too much money because they was blowing up their oil ships too. Not to mention they were spending money with all these bombs. Not to mention we was charging them 2 to 3 times as much for the bombs, breaking them. Now I want to ask you this. If Sunnis and Shiites kill each other, do you think we or Israel will give a damn?
And he looked at me and he said, you know, it's amazing. 1 year ago, you were a dead country. Now you're the hottest country anywhere in the world. He didn't think this was going to happen. He didn't think he'd be kissing my ass. He really didn't. He thought he'd be just another American president that was a loser, where the country was going downhill. But now he has to be nice to me. You tell him he better be nice to me.
God, the image. Don't picture it. It's not a sight for the squeamish.
First off, what are your thoughts on these remarks from Trump, and how will U.S. allies in the Middle East likely react to some of the statements that he made there?
Well, Donald Trump is the most controversial president in the history of the USA presidency. Well, what he said yesterday about the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia has been perceived as an extremely absurd political language, weird, vulgar, and extremely odd. We have all been stunned by such an acceptable language. Probably it has a different connotation in the United States of America, but our connotation of what he said is completely unacceptable.